Shalom, these videos is giving me such a hard time. I have to do it quick. Alright, so the one thing I want to go over is the calendar. That's the main thing I want to go over. Everything else I could wait till later. But I want to go over the calendar. The Israelite calendar. We go by 7-day-a-week calendar. The rest of the world originally did not go by that calendar. So then the year had switched. We couldn't no longer go by the Egyptian calendar according to the Most High. We had to start a new calendar. Now, you can look at Acts chapter 13 verse 5. You can look at not Acts chapter 13 verse 5, Exodus chapter 13 verse 5. You can look at Exodus chapter 12 verse 5 or verse 2 through 5. You can look at Exodus chapter 40 verse 2. I'm going to take you in Exodus chapter 40 verse 17. I'm going to show you in the history of the Egyptian calendar, they went by a solar calendar. They had 10 days in 1 week, 3 weeks in 1 month, 4 months in 1 season. We, as a people, go by a Roman calendar. Now, the Roman calendar, just like the Jewish calendar, goes by a lunar solar calendar. America goes by a solar calendar, which is kind of identical to the Roman calendar. Let me correct myself. Roman calendar goes by a solar calendar. The Jewish calendar goes by the lunar solar calendar, meaning their months is depicted on the new moon. That is usually 29 and 29 and a half days in 1 month. America goes by the solar calendar. With their months, their months is from 31 to 30 days, sometimes 29 days in 1 month. So our month is different. We have different expansion of days in each month. The lunar solar calendar, sometimes it's 354 days in 1 month. Sometimes sometimes it's 365 days in a month in the lunar solar calendar. So you never really know. It's give or take 11 days. No, the solar year is 365 days additional, and there's an additional 2 or 3 days to the solar year, and the lunar year is 354 days. Now we go by the months is depicted by the new moon, so throughout the month we lack 11 days. I hope I explained that well. If I didn't, ask the question at the bottom. I have no problem with answering it, and I'll show you scripture. One scripture is in Psalms chapter 90 verse 4. I'm thinking through 8. No, through 10. I think it's Psalms chapter 90 verse 9. That will answer that question. Will answer most of our questions. So I'm going to go to Exodus chapter 34 verse 21. I'm going to start there. It says, 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In earing time and in harvest thou shalt rest. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. So there's a feast of ingathering at the year's end. Now the feast of weeks. What are the feast of weeks? You can go to Exodus chapter 35 verse 2 to answer that question. It says, 6 days shalt thou work be done, but on the 7th day there shall be unto you a holy Sabbath. An holy day, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. Ye shall kindle no fire throughout the habitation upon the Sabbath day. So we're not supposed to have no fire. We ain't supposed to be burning nothing on the Sabbath day. Now the night might be a different story, and the previous day is the prep day for Sabbath, to prepare yourself some food for the day if you want to eat, if you have to eat during the day. And we do have to eat during the day because we gather during the day. Now go to so I just showed you, it says the Feast of Weeks. So let's figure out how much is a week. Go to, what is the Feast of Weeks? Go to Leviticus chapter 23. We're going to go to Leviticus chapter 23. Verse 15. It says, "And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf." The morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So 7 Sabbaths needs to be complete from the day you brought the wave offering, from the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths. So this so that's the Feast of Weeks. So in our week, it's different from the Egyptian week, which goes by the solar cycle. 3 days off of this week, because we do 7 days, they do 10 days. Also, they only have 3 months to their week, and I'm gonna show you that we don't. 3 weeks to their month. I'm gonna show you that we don't have only 3 weeks to our month. Our month is depicted on when the new moon comes. Sometimes that's 29 and a half days. It's the only time the moon is going to be full and it's going to glow. So the Most High separated our months. He separated our years from the Egyptian. He separated our months from the Egyptian month. We're going to look at Exodus chapter 13. No, we're going to look at Exodus chapter 40, verse 2. Exodus chapter 40, verse 2. It says, "On the first day of the month of the first month, the first day of the first month, thou shalt set up tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and thou shalt put therein the ark of the testimony, and cover the ark with the veil. And thou shalt bring the table and set in order the things that are to be set in order upon it. And thou shalt bring in the candlestick and light the lamps thereof. Thou shalt set the ark of the gold for the incense before the ark of the testimony, and put the hanging of the door of the tabernacle." So this is all the things that needs to be done on the first day of the first month. The first day of the first month was the first day of the year. That was the first day of the year. You go to Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. You number from that day. It says, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your account for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. ye shall make it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. All right, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper door post of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. All right, so when we looked into the Sabbath in chapter 35, Exodus chapter 35, it told us that during the day you can't eat the sap. You can't eat you can't roast anything. We can't kindle the fire. We can't cook during the Sabbath. You can't do it during the Sabbath day, but during the night you can. It just got done saying so right here, because as far as this being the first month unto us in the first year, we numbered our days from that first day. That was 2 weeks that just went by, according to our organized day. The Most High organized the weeks differently, according to Exodus chapter 34. We do 7 days. Egypt did 10 days. We was in Egypt for 430 years. We picked up their customs. So the Most High was teaching us 7 days. These are the weeks that we went by. So 14 days is 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we did Passover. On the 10th day, we grabbed the lamb. We killed it in the evening of the 14th day, and at night, we cooked it and ate it. So that was 2 weeks. The third week was the 7 days of unleavened bread, the 7th day of the 7 days of unleavened bread. 7 days ye shall eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. And you can also notice, before chapter 12, the law of the Sabbath was not literally given. I don't care what nobody says about, 7 days God rested. 7 days was not a literal 7 days. If you read, go back and read Psalms chapter 90, verse 4. Each day was 1,000 years. On the seventh year was. So go back and read it. That was after 7,000 years. And that 7,000 years did not come. That 7,000th year. Let me see. It came during the time of. Let me see. Noah. Noah came around that time. The 7,000th year. And God does not consider killing work. Destroying is not work. Creating is work. Building is work. Buying and selling is work, according to the Most High. But killing, that ain't work. He just got done telling us we can kill on the second Sabbath of the month, which was the Passover, because that was 2 weeks. 6th day, 7th day rest. 6th day, 7th day rest. Our whole schedule was being changed. So you go and look at during the time of Noah, if each year was 1,000 years. During the time of Noah, that was the 7,000th year. That was around the 7,000 year. When Noah was born, it was the 7,039 year where the rest began, where he began to rest, where Noah began to be born. The 7,000th year, he began to rest. And the destruction happened, and that was not work. Most High does not consider killing work. He don't consider killing servile work. The 8,000th year, the rest was over. That was the time of Abraham, when Abraham was about 75 years old, probably like 71 years old. When Abraham was 71 years old, the Most High's rest was over. Genesis chapter 21, verse 4. So his rest ended when Abraham turned about 1 year old. And I took notes. I noted down everything, and I numbered it. I numbered the lineage all the way. So far, I'm at 2 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 31. When it comes to the lineage. Okay, so there was no Sabbath before chapter 12. Exodus chapter 10, verse 12. I'm sorry. There was no Sabbath before Exodus chapter 12. The Sabbath started during the time of Exodus chapter 12. Leviticus chapter 23 was given to them during the time of Exodus chapter 12. So that continued, and the shaping of Egypt was a lot different than the shaping of the Sabbath. Way different. They're not the same. The shaping of Israel, Most High, made them separated from everything Egypt did. Everything you learned there, that's not what you about to. That's not what you about to do here. So he had first 2 weeks, Passover the second week, Sabbath the first week. The third week was another Sabbath, but they was doing the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That was 21 days had went by. Let me see. 21 days went by, and it's going to always be 21 days of each month that they're going to be doing that. That's 3 weeks. Yeah, there's always going to be 21 days of each month, and that's 3 weeks. That's 3 weeks. That's going to be a part of the construction of that first month. The fourth week is the Sabbath that you count. That's going to be the last week of the month, and it's going to always come to that fourth. It's going to always come to 4 weeks, 28 days in each month. That's going to have to be celebrated. 28 days. That's going to be, and it's going to always come to a 29th day for a new moon. The new moon is always 29 to 30 days. All right. So the next is we're going to talk about next lesson. I think I got time. Let me see. Man, I forgot to even pray before I got started teaching all this. So I took y'all to Exodus. I want to take y'all to let me see. I want to take y'all to some backup scriptures to make sure that we are in one accord. Let's go to Exodus chapter 12, verse 41. Let me see. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the same day, it came to pass that all the host of Israel. Okay, we already know that Israel came out in 430 days. 430 years. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generation. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. So he brought them out on a specific day, 2 weeks, 14th day. That's the second Sabbath. But every man's servant that is brought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. Now, this was the other lesson I wanted to go over about how the foreigners, they're our servants. When they come to this nation, they're supposed to be our servants. They're supposed to serve us in our nation. And in order for them to be saved, I'm telling you that they're supposed to serve us, according to Christ in Matthew's chapter 15, verse. Did I write down that verse? I know I did. Matthew's chapter 15, verse 22 through 28, and Mark chapter 7, verse 24 through 30. Look up these scriptures when y'all get the chance. Numbers chapter 10, verse 29. Acts chapter 26, verse 27 through 29. Acts chapter 16, verse 1. Acts chapter 24, verse 10. Acts chapter 16, verse 1 is the precept for Leviticus chapter 24, verse 10. A father depicts what the child is. And if the father is a Greek or an Egyptian, then that father determined what that child was, and that child was a Greek or an Egyptian. That child was not an Israelite. Neither one of those children was Israelites, but they were allowed to congregate with us, and they was treated good in our nation because they had the opportunity to follow Christ. Timotheus was a Greek, was not an Israelite. He was a descendant of Japheth. Supposedly, if an Edomite lived there, I don't know. People want to say the Edomites did not make up all of Greek. They did not kick Javan out of the land. There's no scripture that's gonna say that. But whatever. I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm just going to say that the Gentiles can get salvation if they bow down to our power. Our power, and the Most High put us in authority and of this earth, of this world, and if any nation bows down to us, they have bowed down to the Most High. So that's the way that order works. But if they don't, then they're going to be destroyed. But if they do, that means they have nation. They've forsaken their people, and they walked after our people and our God. But if we forsake our God, we forsook our people and our God and walked after another nation. Okay, so that's what that was about. I gave y'all scripture. Hopefully y'all look over the scriptures. If not, don't bother me none. Let me see. But that was the first year. The calendar I just gave, the weeks, the way the weeks is shaped from the first month and the feast of weeks on each Sabbath, that was the first year. The next year, that same Sabbath continues. It don't change. It stays the same. And it stayed the same all the way up until Christ came to be, and to the point where he was about to be crucified. You go to Matthew's chapter let me see. Matthew's chapter 21. No, that's not it. That's not it. All the way up until when he was about to be crucified. Matthew's chapter 26. I think that's Matthew's chapter 26. Yeah, Matthew's chapter 20, verse 2. It says, "Ye know after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. The assembly together the chief priest and the scribes and the elders of the people unto the palace of the is called Caiaphas." All right, so after 2 days, supposed to be crucified. verse 18. No, we're going to go to verse 17. It says, now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover? So where will we prepare for thou to eat the Passover? The first day of the feast of unleavened bread. Now, as you know, you get a lamb not just on the Passover during this Christ diet. You get a lamb not just on the 14th day, but also on the 15th day, the 16th day, the 17th day, all the way up until the 7th day of unleavened bread, all the way up until the 21st day. What happened was they would take a lamb, and this was called a 7-day offering. They did this every day by day. They sacrificed a lamb, but for the feast of unleavened bread, you did the same thing you did for Passover. Passover, you got bitter herbs, you got bread, and you got the lamb, and you ate it. Now, the feast of unleavened bread, according to Christ, had caused them to break bread, eat the offering, and drink wine. So, the feast of unleavened bread, they ate the offering and they drank wine and they ate the meat. Why? Because every day that was traditionally done. Now here, a new tradition started where they broke bread and then they drank wine, and they did this in remembrance of Christ. So he'll break the bread and say, take this, eat, this is my body. And then he gave them the cup and said, this is my blood. The drink, the wine, a cup of wine, and said, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. So this was the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. If you scroll down, we still in this day. If you read this whole chapter, you'll see that we're still in this day. Verily I say unto thee that this night, so this is the same day, verse 34, when he was talking to them about his death. He said, verily, verily, I say unto thee that this night, before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. You shall deny me 3 times. So before the cock crow, I will be denied 3 times by Peter. Goes down and show that this was the same night that Judas betrayed him. So this is the first day had passed. So now we're in the night. All the way up to verse 27, verse 1. It says, when the morning was come. This is the second night. It's the second day. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they had bound him. They led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate. So all of that happened. You know, Pilate talked and tried to ask him questions, try to talk to him. Christ wasn't talking back. You know, he just listened, according to this. But in John and a couple other books, it shows that he said something back to him, but it wasn't much. So this next day started. During the morning, he talked to him, he talked to the people, and the people took someone else over him. You come down to verse 45 and verse 20 in chapter 27. It says, now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land unto the 9th hour, and about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And so it's getting dark, you know. And when it gets completely dark at night, that's when he gave up the ghost. He died. And that's when the temples cracked and all of that stuff. So he died at night. So this is 2 days during the Passover. 2 days during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, look at what happens. In the end of the Sabbath. Hold on. We're going to go to verse 63 and look at what the people, look at what the man says. It says, command therefore that the sepulchre hold on. We're gonna go to verse 62. It says, "Now the next day, we're in the third day now, third day of the unleavened bread, that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priest and together unto Pilate." Go to Exodus chapter 16, verse 22. You'll see the day of preparation is the day before Sabbath, saying, "Sir, we remember that deceiver said while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be the first." All right. So 3 days. This is the third day right here that they're talking. This is the third day from when he started saying that after 2 days. Well, he was that night he was crucified. He was dead. He died the night of the second day. So it was 2 days that went by and 2 nights. He died the second night. So the third day came in verse 62, and he said that, talking about how he feared that after 3 days he would come by. So this was the day of what we would know today as Friday, but no, it wouldn't be Friday. We don't know what day this is, because they based it off of when they came out of Egypt. They based the days and the months, the years off of when they came out of Egypt. I think I did a good 7 days. So the days changed. Egypt had 10 days, we had 7 days. The days changed. Egypt had 3 weeks, we had 4 weeks. The months changed. So I think I proved that too, because the 7th day of unleavened bread is the 21st day of the month. All right. So let's and then we go by the new moon, and the new moon always lands on the 29th day. All right. So we're here. It says, "Now the next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came together unto Pilate." And they talked to Pilate, tried to tell him, "Let us move the body." Okay. So this is the day of the preparation, the day before Sabbath, was on the third day of the unleavened bread. In the beginning of the Sabbath, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day. So the Sabbath would have been the 4th day of unleavened bread. So as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene. But the second day since he's been dead. It would have bread second day since he's been dead. That's what the Sabbath would have been. The third day would have been on the first day. So 3 days shall he rise. So he rose on the first day. That would have been the third day, because the preparation was on the Friday. Well, not the Friday, was on the day. Preparation was the third day of the unleavened bread. The Feast of Unleavened Bread. Sabbath the 4th day. The first day is the 5th day. So 3 days since the Christ had died. So the Sabbath is not always on the... So my point is, the Sabbath is not always on the... Well, it wasn't always on in the beginning, the 7th day of the year. That was just the way they started it off. The first 7 days, the first 2 weeks was the first 7 days, was the first 7 days, first 14 days. The 7th day was rest. And the second 7th day was the Passover. And the third 7th day, which the Passover was also rest during the day, during the night, you could cook. The third 21st day, which was the 7th day of unleavened bread. And the fourth 7th day was the beginning of what we count from 7 Sabbaths. I think they call that the sheaf offering or something like that. I don't know. But those were the 4 weeks. The first 4 weeks, that was a day to be remembered every year. But throughout every year, was they kept the same Sabbaths. They kept the same 7 days every year. Out of Egypt all the way to the next year. So 6 days shall you work, 7th day you rest till the next year. 6 days shall you work, 7th day you rest. The time never switched. The year never depicted the days. Or changed the days or depicted the days. It always stayed the same every year. The days always stayed the same. Now the holy days probably didn't stay the same because they was depicted by the month. But the month didn't depict the days. The sun depicted the days, and when the sun comes up, that's the day. When it goes down, that's the night. So that's the way. I see the schedule. Now the problem comes when they whitewashed us, made us forget who we was and where we came from, and they changed the months. When originally they did their month. They did their months originally on March. Their month originally started on March, just like ours, except for ours wasn't a set schedule. It was dependent on the new moon. It was dependent on the new moon. Each year was dependent on the new moon. If it came to spring, we depended on the harvest of spring, a set schedule. Like the white man depends on a set schedule. Now, when it comes to the days, they say that the 7th day, that Saturday is the 7th day. And the came from Israel, that came from Judaism. However, they didn't say whether or not the history of the 7 days came from Judaism, because history is different. They didn't go through our history and say this is when y'all came out of Egypt. No, they just said it should be 7 days out of the week. That's how they did it. But they didn't go through the history and see whether or not there was 7 days out of the week. And when did those 7 days start? Okay, so we don't know whether or not they're, bamboozling us or not. We just know in Jeremiah chapter 10 verse 2 it says, "Go not the way of the heathen." So every way of the heathen, the Most High don't want us to go. He wants to go by the schedule that He set for us. And the schedule that He set for us got done away with. We got deprogrammed. Our minds is deprogrammed. We don't even know the history. We don't even know what we're working with here. So when we come to the knowledge, the question is, what should we do? What we should do is we should go by what they did, what the Most High did with Israel in the Bible. He separated them based off of the new month, the first month, numbered our days from that month, and we continued it from there. And that's where the Sabbath comes in at. This is always on those particular feast of weeks. You know what I'm saying? And not every year, but in this particular year, in the first particular year, that's where it stayed on. It didn't change. It didn't switch. It stayed the same. So I'm saying that we should go based off of the biblical tradition. The way God made things in the beginning, the way He said it in the beginning, we should, and not the way the Roman calendar has been set up, because you can't trust them. They already done told us we're not the Israelites. We already found out that the first day of the month is not on January, it's on March. We already done found God wasn't born on Christmas. We already, not God, but Jesus wasn't born on Christmas. We already found out that the perception of Christ, first of all, He's not a white man. Second of all, He's not God as we thought He was God. You understand what I'm saying? He's not. He is God on earth, but He is not God as we thought. What Jesus is, just like he's the most high angel. He's the most high angelic host, and all the other angels is under Him. All of them. They're under him. That's deep. But it's not in him. I just got done reading the scripture. O Lord, I know that the way of man is not in himself, not in man that walketh to direct his steps. But Jesus is in his consciousness, just like the rest of those angelic forces. They do only what the Most High tells them to do. They walk how the Most High tells them to walk. So each and every last one of those angelic forces is a image, is in the image of God. They look like God. They all look just alike. Ezekiel chapter 10 and 21, you will see that. All of those elite angels look alike and they are one. And just like every last one of them, so the Most High gave them the position of Godhead. Except El's position of Godhead does not trump the angelic host, the Kruvim. It does not trump them. Just like the Godhead of the rest of these men don't trump the Godhead of Israel, because Israel was set by the Godhead of the angelic host. So, Shalom Alpha Akwath. I gave y'all the calendar. Tell me what y'all think about it. It's a but it was altered in the 4th century by some of the Jewish scholars. Calendar was altered in the 4th century by pagan Jewish scholars that had their own agendas and was not actually a part of the tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel, but those others that Hitler had ended up having to crucify. Now, also, so that's just a little history, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully I gave enough information. I know more. Let me see. But if you get time, look at Exodus chapter 7, verse 7, Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 7. I go through all of the lineages and the verses and the chapters and all that stuff, just to get an answer, just to find some type of answer to the question that I had. And I got numbers. Went over the numbers, went over the calculations, because it's actually all numbered all the way up to the time of the last king. And I'm going to continue going through that. And our answer from Babylon to Christ was 400 years, according to 2nd Ezra chapter 7, verse 28. And I want to see if I can get that number all the way up to we number from the day 0 is Christ. And if we can get the number from when Christ was, then we can number today and figure out actual calendar was from back in the day when Moses walked the earth. So that's one of my, I see it in the Bible, I see it in the Apocrypha. I'm decoding, I'm working, and the next time I get that calendar out, I'm going to bring it out the rest of the world. I'm going to organize it, and I'm going to give it to the rest of the world. I'm going to go by timeline, years by years. Shalom, Ak, Alpha, Akwath. That is to say, peace, brothers.